All right, we are on lesson 1.8, roots. We're going to learn about roots, and we're on page 72, so if you need to pause the video, go ahead and do so now to get to your book. Okay, so let's take a look at square roots. A square root of a number is one of its two equal factors. Square meaning two. So if you think of it like this, what number times itself, what number would you write down twice and multiply to get the certain number in your square root sign? And that would be your square root. So for example, this is your radical sign, and if we had 36 inside, we would think, what number times itself, what number would I write down twice and multiply to get 36? Well, 6 times 6 is 36, so the square root of 36 is 6. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of these. The directions say find each square root. So I want to find the square root of 64. So I want to think what number times itself equals 64. Well, 8 times 8 equals 64. So my root is 8. Okay, let's take a look at a number with decimals. So now notice that there is a positive negative sign on the outside of this square root because roots are positive and negative. So we're going to actually bring that number down into our answer. So if you ignore the decimal for just a second and treat this number like 121, isn't 11 times 11 121? Yes. So I know my numbers, I have 11 in there, and now I just need to figure out where the decimal goes back into this number in order to get 1.21. So if I put the decimal here and treat this like 1.1, so there are two, remember I count the decimals after I multiply, so there are two numbers after the decimal, and there are two numbers after the decimal here. So my root is 1.1. And let's take a look at and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that because we had this positive negative sign in front, I'm going to put positive negative in front of my answer. Okay, let's take a look at one with fractions. Example number 3. So you're going to see this negative in front. We're going to bring that negative down in our answer, and we're going to actually find the square root of both of these numbers one at a time. So you can treat these as individual numbers, but you're going to keep them within this fraction. So the square root of 25, think 5 times 5 is 25. So the square root of 25 is 5. And this is an example that I just did a minute ago. 6 times 6 is 36, so the square root of 36 is 6. And then this negative that was on the outside of that root sign, I'm going to leave in my answer. So negative 5/6 would be my root. And now this one is unique because we actually cannot solve a square root with a negative on the inside, because there is no such thing as a number times itself that equals a negative. The numbers have to either both be positive, right? 4 times 4 is 16, or they both have to be negative. They have to be the exact same number. And negative times negative is also positive. So it's not possible for us to find a root of a negative on the inside. So we would say there is no root for this answer. Okay, now let's take a look at solving equations with squared variables inside. For example, number 5. So if you take a look at this equation, it says solve t squared equals 169. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to actually square root both sides. You're going to find the square root of both sides. So the square root of t squared is t, because t times t is t squared. So the square root of t squared is t. It's always going to be the letter itself. And then the square root of 169 is 13. 13 times 13 is 169. So we're also going to add in a positive negative in front of our answer. Positive negative 13. Because positive 13 times positive 13 is 169, and negative 13 times negative 13 is also positive 169. So positive negative 13 is the root. Okay, let's try a couple more of those. If we have 289 equals a squared. I want to square root both sides. So the square root of a squared is a, because a times a is a squared. And then think, what number times itself equals 289? Well, that's 17. 17 times 17, so the square root is 17, and then remember, we're going to add the positive negative in front of it. There are 2 roots for that. And let's take a look at this one. So I have an m squared on this side, so I'm going to find the square root of both sides. The square root of m squared is m. And now, because this has a decimal, I'm going to ignore the decimal for just a second. And that number's 9. Okay, so think, what times itself is 9? Well, that's 3. So if I write 3 times 3 is 9, now I just need to figure out where I should put the decimal in order to get 0.09 when I multiply. So if I put the decimal in front, 0.3 times itself, 0.3, and then let's count. I know that 3 times 3 is 9. Let's count the and move the decimal in our answer. So there's 2 digits after these decimals. If I move it over 1, 2, then I will have 0.9. So my answer is positive negative 0.3. Positive negative 0.3 is the root. And then let's try this last one. So we have a fraction. So we're going to square root both sides. And remember, with a fraction, you can find the square root of the top and the bottom number. So the square root of y squared is y. And then let's solve these individually. So the square root of 4, think, what times itself is 4? That's 2. 2 times 2, so the square root of 4 is 2. And then the square root of 25, 5 times 5 is 25. Square root of 25 is 5. And then we're going to add that positive negative in front. Positive negative 2/5. Okay, we will practice more tomorrow.